If you feel stuck in a cycle of starting and stopping, this story is for you. It's about a journey from being controlled by laziness to mastering self-discipline. You will see how the main character, much like many of us, struggled to follow through on his goals. But everything changed when he discovered the power of a consistent routine. This isn't about working harder, it's about building smarter habits that work for you automatically. The video will show you the exact turning point that made all the difference. Watch to see how his breakthrough can become yours.
In the small village of Rampur, there lived a boy named Raju who wanted to change his life. He dreamed of a good job and making his mother proud. But his days were ruled by distraction. His mind was constantly pulled away from his books by the sounds of his friends playing outside or by his own wandering thoughts. He would tell himself that tomorrow he would start studying seriously, but tomorrow always brought the same temptations. His attempts at studying or exercise would last a day or two, then fade away like morning mist. He would open his mathematics book with a fresh sense of purpose, only to find his attention drifting to the patterns of light on the wall after just a few problems. A plan to run each morning would see him lace up his shoes one day, only to leave them untouched the next. The initial burst of motivation felt real, but it never had the strength to carry him through the week. The frustration grew as he watched others succeed while he remained stuck in the same place. He saw boys from neighboring families leave for college or secure apprenticeships in the city. Each success story felt like a small stone added to a heavy pile on his shoulders. He knew he was just as capable, but his inability to follow through created a wall between him and the future he imagined for himself. He felt the gap between his dreams and his daily actions widening with each passing week. The image of himself in a crisp uniform, sending money home to his mother, became more distant and faint. Meanwhile, the reality of his unmade bed and unopened books grew more solid and undeniable each morning. This internal conflict was a quiet but constant presence in his life. The dusty village paths he walked seemed to mirror the unclear path of his own future. He would kick at stones along the road, his mind as clouded as the dust he stirred up. The path led to the market, to the fields, to the river, but none of these destinations felt like progress. They were just places he went, routines he followed, without any larger goal in sight. He would sit with his books open, but his mind would wander to easier, more immediate pleasures. The words on the page would blur as he thought about the sweet mangoes waiting in the kitchen, or the game of cricket he was missing. The immediate gratification of these distractions was always more powerful than the abstract reward of a future he couldn't quite touch or feel. This cycle of hope and disappointment became the familiar rhythm of his young life. A new Monday would bring a new resolution, a fresh plan written neatly in a notebook. By Wednesday, the plan would be forgotten, and by Friday, he would feel the familiar weight of failure. It was a loop he didn't know how to break. The story of Raju begins not with action, but with this quiet, persistent struggle. There were no dramatic outbursts or grand failures, just a slow erosion of confidence. His was a battle fought in the small moments of each day, a war against the inertia of his own habits. He was stuck, and he didn't possess the tools to get himself moving. What he didn't know was that a simple observation was about to change everything. The solution to his problem was not a matter of finding more willpower or a better plan. It was something much simpler, something happening right outside his window every morning while he slept. The key was already there, waiting for him to notice it.
Each morning, as Raju struggled to get out of bed, someone else was already awake. While Raju was hitting the snooze button on his alarm, Gopal Kaka was already moving through his small house. The retired army man began his day in the pre-dawn darkness, a time when the world was still and quiet. His movements were not rushed or frantic, but carried a quiet purpose. He had done this for so many years that his body knew the routine without his mind having to command it. Raju first noticed him from his window. He would wake up feeling heavy and look outside, and there he would be. Gopal Kaka was a steady figure against the fading stars, a silhouette of discipline in the soft morning light. Raju began to watch him, not with any grand intention, but with a growing curiosity. It was strange to see someone so active when the rest of the village, including himself, was still wrapped in sleep. While the village slept, Gopal Kaka swept his courtyard. The rhythmic sound of the broom on the hard-packed earth was soft but distinct. His movements were precise and unhurried. He did not rush to finish the task. Each stroke of the broom seemed to have its own place in time. He swept the same area every morning, even if it looked clean from the day before. It was the act itself that mattered, not just the result. There was no audience for this performance. No one was there to watch him or to be impressed by his early rising. His neighbors were still inside their homes. The children who played in that courtyard during the day were fast asleep. He was not doing this for praise or recognition. This was a private ritual, a commitment he had made to himself a long time ago. It was a form of self-respect that required no witness. This was not a show of discipline, but simply the man's natural state of being. For Gopal Kaka, waking up at this hour and beginning his chores was as normal as breathing. It did not require a great force of will. It was just what he did. The discipline was so deeply ingrained that it had ceased to feel like an effort. It was simply the way he lived his life, a part of his identity. Raju watched, curious about the peace that seemed to surround the old man's routine. There was a calmness to Gopal Kaka that Raju lacked. While Raju's mind was often a storm of wants and distractions, the old man seemed centered. His actions were deliberate and focused. He was fully present in whatever he was doing, whether it was sweeping or later when he moved on to other tasks. This sense of inner quiet was something Raju had never experienced. He saw him move from sweeping to push-ups, then to reading under a single light. After the courtyard was swept, Gopal Kaka would perform a set of push-ups on the clean ground. His form was strict, his body straight as a plank. Then he would sit on a small cot under the bare bulb that hung from a wire and read from a book. The entire sequence flowed from one activity to the next without hesitation or debate. It was a seamless transition from physical labor to mental engagement. The entire sequence was a silent ballet of habit, performed day after day. Rain or shine, hot or cold, Gopal Kaka was out there. Raju noticed that the routine never changed. The order of events was always the same. The timing was always the same. This consistency was its own kind of power. It was a display of reliability that Raju found both strange and compelling. He began to look for him each morning, a part of his own waking ritual. This consistent display planted a seed of curiosity in Raju's restless mind. He started to wonder what it would be like to have that kind of control over his own day. He began to question the chaos of his own mornings. Why did he feel so tired? Why was it so hard to decide what to do? Watching Gopal Kaka offered no immediate answers, but it posed a quiet question that lingered in Raju's thoughts long after the sun had risen.
One morning, driven by a frustration he couldn't name, Raju approached the old man. The feeling had been building for weeks, a quiet pressure behind his eyes each time he saw Gopal Kaka moving with such purpose. It wasn't anger or jealousy, but a deep curiosity mixed with the ache of his own inability to start his day. He walked across the narrow lane that separated their homes, his footsteps hesitant on the dry ground. He found Gopal Kaka tending to his vegetable garden, the sun just beginning to warm the soil. The old man was on his knees, his fingers gently working around the base of a tomato plant. The air smelled of damp earth and growing things. Raju stood for a moment, watching the careful, deliberate movements. It was the same unhurried focus he had seen from his window.
Gopal Kaka was fully absorbed in the task, unaware he was being observed. Raju's question was simple, almost childish. He blurted it out before he could change his mind. "Why do you do the same things every day?" He gestured vaguely toward the old man's house. "The sweeping, the exercises, the reading, it's always the same. Don't you get bored?" The question hung in the air, sounding smaller and more naive than he had intended. He expected a short answer, maybe even a dismissal. Gopal Kaka looked up, his eyes holding a depth of experience Raju could only guess at. He didn't seem surprised by the interruption or the question. He wiped his hands on the cloth tied at his waist, his gaze steady and thoughtful. He took a moment to really see the boy standing before him, to recognize the genuine confusion behind the question. It was a look that made Raju feel both seen and understood. He didn't answer immediately, instead inviting Raju to sit on a nearby bench. He pointed to a simple wooden bench under the shade of a neem tree. "Sit," he said. "It is a good question." He settled himself beside Raju, not facing him directly, but looking out at the garden. The silence that followed was not awkward, but comfortable, giving Raju space to collect his thoughts and Gopal Kaka time to form his response. He spoke not of discipline as a punishment, but as a form of freedom. He began, "People think routine is a chain. They see the same actions each day and feel trapped, but I have found the opposite to be true." He explained that when his day has a structure, his mind is not cluttered with decisions about what to do next. That mental space is freed up for more important things. The routine, he said, handles the small things so he can focus on the big ones. He explained that routine was not a cage, but the structure that allowed things to grow. He pointed to the wooden frame that supported the climbing beans. "See that?" he asked. "The frame does not restrict the bean plant. It gives it a path to reach the sun. Without the structure, the plant would sprawl on the ground, struggling for light." He said a well-ordered day acts in the same way. It provides a support system for a person's goals and energy, allowing them to rise higher than they could on their own. The old man's words were gentle, but they carried the weight of a life lived with intention. Each sentence felt considered, each idea built upon the last. There was no rush to convince Raju of anything. He was simply sharing a truth he had discovered for himself over many years. The simplicity of his explanation made the idea feel accessible, not like a distant ideal reserved for special people. He spoke of the army not with nostalgia for war, but for the clarity of a well-ordered life. "In the army, we learned that chaos is the enemy of progress," he said. "When everything has its place and every action has its time, you can move forward with confidence. You are not wasting energy wondering what to do next." He missed that clarity, he admitted, not the fighting, but the profound sense of order. His morning routine was his way of bringing that clarity into his civilian life. This conversation became the first real turning point in Raju's understanding. For the first time, someone had reframed discipline not as a burden, but as a tool. It was not about denying himself pleasure, but about building a life where he could achieve more meaningful pleasures, like pride and self-respect. He left the garden that morning, not with a complicated plan, but with a single new idea to consider. The cage he had always imagined was in fact a supporting frame.
Gopal Kaka pointed to the neat rows of spinach and tomatoes in his garden. The plants stood in straight lines, their leaves green and healthy. The soil around them was dark and moist. It was a small plot of land, but it was clearly well cared for.
Every plant had its space, and there were no weeds to be seen. It was a picture of order and intention. "Beta, habits are like farmers," he said, his voice calm and sure. He did not look at Raju, but kept his eyes on the garden. He spoke as if stating a simple fact of nature, like the sun rising in the east. The comparison felt immediate and grounded, something Raju could understand because he could see the evidence right in front of him. It was not a complicated theory, but a principle drawn from the earth. What you plant today grows tomorrow. You may not see results now, but one day your habits will either feed you or starve you. He let the words hang in the air. The choice was stark. The habits a person cultivated would determine their future nourishment. There was no middle ground, and action repeated daily was never neutral. It was always either a seed for a beneficial plant or a seed for a weed. The harvest was inevitable. He explained that a farmer doesn't plant a seed and dig it up the next day to check for growth. That would be foolish. The farmer understands that growth takes place unseen, beneath the surface. The seed needs time to break open, to send down a root, to push a shoot toward the light. Impatience would kill the potential. The farmer's job is to have faith in the process, not to demand immediate proof. He waters it, protects it from weeds, and trusts the process happening underground. The daily watering is a small act. Pulling a weed is a small act. None of these actions, on their own, seem to change anything dramatically. But together, consistently applied, they create the conditions for life to flourish. The farmer's trust is not blind. It is based on the understanding of how nature works. He knows that his consistent care is what allows the hidden magic to happen. In the same way, our daily actions are seeds we plant in the soil of our future. Every morning, we are given a handful of seeds. They are our choices: how we spend our first hour, what we choose to focus on, how we react to difficulty. These are all seeds. We drop them into the ground of our lives through our actions and our inactions. We are planting our future with every day that passes, whether we realize it or not. Some seeds, like laziness, grow into weeds that choke our potential. If a person plants the seed of staying in bed instead of taking a walk, that seed takes root. It grows into a weed that saps energy and encourages more lethargy. The weed of procrastination grows from the seed of putting off a task. These weeds don't just occupy space, they steal sunlight and nutrients from the good plants. They can quickly overrun the entire garden if they are not removed. Other seeds, like a morning run or an hour of study, grow into strong, fruitful trees. These actions might feel small and insignificant when you do them. The run is short. The hour of study covers only a few pages. But each time you do them, you are planting a seed for a strong oak tree. That tree will eventually provide shade, stability, and fruit. It will become a permanent part of your landscape, something you can rely on. It starts as a tiny seed of effort and grows into a source of sustained strength. The metaphor shifted Raju's perspective from immediate gratification to long-term harvest. He had always judged his actions by how they made him feel in the moment. Staying in bed felt good immediately. Avoiding a difficult task brought instant relief. Now, he saw that this was like eating the seed instead of planting it. The momentary comfort was stealing from his future harvest. He began to see his choices in terms of their yield, not their immediate ease. He began to see his life not as a series of random events, but as a garden he could cultivate. His future was not something that would just happen to him. It was a plot of land that he was responsible for. He could choose what to plant and how to tend it. He could pull the weeds of distraction and water the seeds of focus. This thought gave him a sense of agency he had never felt before. He was not a passive bystander in his own life. He was the gardener.
Inspired but wary of his own history of failure, Raju decided to start small. He knew that ambitious plans had been his downfall before. Grand declarations of studying for 3 hours or running 5 kilometers always collapsed under their own weight. This time, he thought of the farmer planting a single seed. He would not try to plant an entire field in one day. He would start with just 2 seeds and tend to them with care. He chose 2 seeds to plant, a short morning run and 1 hour of focused study. They seemed almost laughably simple. The run would be whatever distance he could manage without exhausting himself. The study hour would be measured by the clock on the wall, a period of time where his books were open and his attention was directed solely at them. He did not set a page count or a speed requirement. The goal was simply to complete the action, to plant the seed. The first morning, his run was only 200 meters, leaving him breathless and embarrassed. His lungs burned and his legs felt weak. He had to stop just a short way down the road, his hands on his knees as he gasped for air. He saw a neighbor leading a buffalo and felt a pang of foolishness. The animal seemed to have more stamina than he did. The old voice of doubt whispered that this was pointless, that such a small effort could never make a difference. But he remembered the farmer's metaphor and did not dig up the seed. Gopal Kaka's words echoed in his mind. A farmer does not uproot a seedling because it is small. He trusts that the roots are spreading underground. Raju pushed aside the embarrassment. The distance did not matter. The feeling of inadequacy did not matter. What mattered was that he had run. He had performed the action. The seed was in the ground. He came home, showered, and sat with his books for exactly 1 hour. The cold water washed away the sweat and the lingering feeling of shame. He set his alarm clock for 60 minutes and opened his mathematics textbook. His mind, as usual, tried to wander. It tugged at his attention, suggesting he look out the window or get a drink of water. But he gently brought it back to the equations. He did not achieve profound understanding in that hour, but he achieved presence. He did not tell his friends or make a grand announcement on social media. There was no triumphant post about his new healthy lifestyle. He did not boast to his mother about his sudden dedication. In the past, he had often felt a surge of satisfaction from telling people about his plans, as if the announcement itself was an accomplishment. This time, he understood that the real work was private. The validation he sought was not from others, but from his own conscience. This effort was for himself alone, a quiet pact between his present and future self. It was an agreement made in the quiet of the morning, a promise that did not need an audience. He was investing in a version of himself that did not yet exist, a future Raju who would be stronger and more knowledgeable. The run and the study hour were the currency of that investment, small deposits into account that would one day yield a return. That night, he felt an unfamiliar sense of calm, the satisfaction of a promise kept. As he lay in bed, there was no restless churning of regret about the day. There was no mental list of things he had failed to do. Instead, there was a simple, solid feeling. He had done what he said he would do. The day felt complete in a way that it rarely did. It was not a feeling of excitement, but of quiet integrity. It was a tiny victory, insignificant to the outside world, but monumental to him. No one would have noticed any change in him. He looked the same. His life appeared the same. But internally, a fundamental shift had occurred. He had proven to himself that he could follow through. He had broken the cycle of hope and failure for one single day. That small success was a crack of light under a heavy door. The journey of 1,000 miles had begun with a single, deliberate step. Raju did not know where the path led or how long it would take. He only knew that he had finally taken a step forward. The direction was less important than the act of moving. For the first time, he was not standing still, wondering which way to go. He was walking. The destination would reveal itself in time.
After a week, the initial excitement wore off. The alarm clock felt heavier. That first jolt of novelty that had propelled him out of bed was gone. Now the sound of the alarm was just an interruption, a demand on his comfort. The warmth of the blanket felt more inviting than the cool morning air. The mental debate began each morning. A quiet argument between the part of him that wanted to grow and the part that wanted to sleep. On the 5th day, it was raining, a perfect excuse to stay in bed. The sound of drops hitting the tin roof was steady and soothing. The world outside his window was gray and wet. The road would be muddy. His shoes would get soaked. His clothes would be damp and uncomfortable. Every logical reason pointed toward staying inside. It was a justification that felt entirely reasonable. This was the kind of morning that had always defeated him in the past. The old voice of laziness whispered that one day wouldn't matter. It was a persuasive voice, familiar and smooth. It told him that skipping one run would not ruin his progress. It assured him that his body could use the rest. It painted a cozy picture of rolling over and drifting back to sleep. The voice made the choice seem insignificant, a small concession to comfort. It was the same voice that had guided his decisions for years. This was the critical moment where previous attempts had always ended. Raju recognized the feeling. It was the crossroads he had reached countless times before. This was the point where motivation ran out and the hard work began. In the past, he had always turned back at this junction. He had chosen the path of least resistance. That choice had always felt good in the moment, but it had led him to the same place of frustration. He was standing at a familiar gate. But Raju thought of Gopal Kaka, who surely faced rainy mornings too. He pictured the old man waking up in the same pre-dawn darkness, hearing the same rain on his roof. He wondered if Gopal Kaka ever felt the pull of his warm bed. The thought was a small anchor in the storm of his hesitation. He realized that discipline is not what you do when you feel motivated, but what you do when you don't. The true test was not on the sunny, easy days. The true test was on the rainy, difficult ones. The choice to act without the support of feeling was the essence of building a habit. He put on his shoes and ran through the drizzle, feeling the cold rain on his face. The action was mechanical. He did not feel a surge of energy or a sudden burst of willpower. He simply moved his body through the motions. The rain was cold on his skin. The ground was soft under his feet. His breath formed small clouds in the damp air. There was no joy in the act itself, only the act of doing it. He was proving something to himself that went deeper than feeling. That run, done without desire, felt more powerful than all the previous ones combined. The runs fueled by excitement had been fleeting. This run, fueled by a simple decision, had a different quality. It was solid. It was a victory over his own inertia. When he returned home, wet and cold, he felt a quiet strength that had nothing to do with physical fitness. He had done the thing he did not want to do. That was a muscle he had never exercised before. He learned that consistency builds its own motivation, a momentum that carries you forward. The good feeling was no longer the cause of the action, but the result. By showing up even when he didn't want to, he created a track record of reliability. That track record became a source of confidence. Each completed run made it slightly easier to complete the next one. The momentum was not a feeling, it was a fact based on accumulated actions. He was no longer relying on a feeling, he was building a behavior. The run was becoming something he did, a part of his identity, like brushing his teeth. It was moving from a conscious effort to an automatic routine. The internal debate was shortening, the resistance was softening.
He was learning to work with the wiring of his brain, to install a new program that would run on its own. The habit was taking root below the surface where motivation could not touch it. He put on his shoes and ran through the drizzle, feeling the cold rain on his face. The action was mechanical. He did not feel a surge of energy or a sudden burst of willpower. He simply moved his body through the motions. The rain was cold on his skin. The ground was soft under his feet. His breath formed small clouds in the damp air. There was no joy in the act itself, only the act of doing it. He was proving something to himself that went deeper than feeling. That run, done without desire, felt more powerful than all the previous ones combined. The runs fueled by excitement had been fleeting. This run, fueled by a simple decision, had a different quality. It was solid. It was a victory over his own inertia. When he returned home, wet and cold, he felt a quiet strength that had nothing to do with physical fitness. He had done the thing he did not want to do. That was a muscle he had never exercised before.
He learned that consistency builds its own motivation, a momentum that carries you forward. The good feeling was no longer the cause of the action, but the result. By showing up even when he didn't want to, he created a track record of reliability. That track record became a source of confidence. Each completed run made it slightly easier to complete the next one. The momentum was not a feeling, it was a fact based on accumulated actions. He was no longer relying on a feeling, he was building a behavior. The run was becoming something he did, a part of his identity, like brushing his teeth. It was moving from a conscious effort to an automatic routine. The internal debate was shortening. The resistance was softening. He was learning to work with the wiring of his brain, to install a new program that would run on its own. The habit was taking root below the surface, where motivation could not touch it.
Weeks passed. The 200-meter run became 500 meters, then a full kilometer. The increase was not the result of a conscious decision to push harder. It happened naturally, almost without his notice. One morning, he simply felt he could run a little farther. His body had grown accustomed to the effort. The distance that had once left him breathless now felt like a comfortable warm-up. He did not force the progress. It unfolded on its own timeline, a quiet testament to his consistency. Raju noticed his body changing, not in dramatic ways, but in subtle shifts. He did not wake up one day with muscles like a wrestler. The changes were more internal, more functional. His posture felt straighter as he walked. His shoulders did not hunch forward as much. There was a lightness to his movements that had not been there before. The transformation was not for show, it was for use. His body was becoming a more efficient instrument. He no longer woke up feeling heavy and groggy. The struggle to open his eyes and face the day diminished. The fog that had clouded his mind each morning began to lift. His energy lasted throughout the day. He did not experience the familiar afternoon slump that had once tempted him toward a nap. His stamina for daily chores and tasks improved. This newfound vitality was a direct reward for his morning investment. His breathing was easier on the run, his muscles responding with less complaint. The burning in his lungs was replaced by a steady, rhythmic flow of air. His legs carried him forward with a familiar resilience. The initial shock of exertion softened into a manageable rhythm. His body was not fighting the activity anymore. It was cooperating. It had adapted to the new demand placed upon it, becoming stronger and more capable in the process. The hour of study, once a battle against distraction, became a period of deep focus. The constant tug-of-war in his mind quieted. He could sit with a book and remain present with the material. The words on the page held his attention. He found himself understanding concepts that had previously seemed impenetrable. The mental barrier between himself and his studies was slowly dissolving. Learning was becoming less of a struggle and more of a discovery. His mind felt clearer,
like muddy water that had been allowed to settle. The constant chatter of random thoughts and worries receded. A sense of calm order replaced the mental clutter. He could think through problems with more logic and less emotion. Decisions became easier to make. This mental clarity was perhaps the most valuable change of all. It affected every part of his day, not just his study hour. He was experiencing the compound interest of small daily investments. Each run and each study session was a small deposit. Alone, they seemed insignificant. Together, over time, they were accumulating into a substantial reserve of strength and knowledge. The benefits were multiplying in a way he had not anticipated. The whole was becoming greater than the sum of its parts. The principle Gopal Kaka had described was proving true in his own life. The habits were no longer tasks to be completed, but parts of his day he looked forward to. He did not dread the run or the study session. They became anchors in his day, moments of predictable peace and productivity. He missed them if something interfered. The sense of accomplishment they provided was a reliable source of satisfaction. The activities had shifted from being obligations to being welcome rituals. The discipline was becoming natural, woven into the fabric of his identity. It was no longer something he had to painfully extract from himself each morning. It was simply how he lived. He was a person who ran and studied. This identity felt authentic and solid. The effort had transitioned from external imposition to internal characteristic. He was being fed by the seeds he had planted weeks earlier. The harvest was no longer a distant concept. It was his daily reality.
One evening, a notice was posted in the village square. It was nailed to the old banyan tree where official announcements always appeared. A small crowd had gathered, their faces lit by the fading orange light of the setting sun. They murmured to each other, passing the news along in hushed, excited tones. The paper was crisp and white, a stark contrast to the weathered bark of the tree. It represented something new, an opportunity breaking the familiar rhythm of village life. The government was recruiting for stable, respected jobs in the city. The positions offered a regular salary, a pension, and a sense of security that was rare in their rural community. It was the kind of job that could change a family's future, lifting them out of subsistence farming and into a different class. For many young men, this notice was a source of immense anxiety, a reminder of all they were not prepared for. The competition would be fierce, drawing applicants from villages across the entire district. The selection process had two parts, a physical fitness test and a written examination. The physical test would assess strength and endurance, requiring a timed run and a series of exercises. The written exam would cover general knowledge, mathematics, and reasoning skills. It was a comprehensive evaluation designed to find the most capable candidates. For most, this two-part challenge seemed like a mountain to climb without any training or preparation. It was a test that required a level of fitness and knowledge that daily farm work did not provide. For the first time, Raju looked at such an opportunity not with panic, but with quiet assessment. He did not feel the familiar tightening in his chest or the rush of insecurity. He stood at the edge of the crowd and read the notice carefully. He mentally broke down the requirements. He did not see an impossible obstacle. He saw a set of challenges that could be met. His perspective had shifted from one of fear to one of calm analysis. His morning runs had prepared him for the physical test. He thought about the timed run requirement. He had been building his stamina for weeks. His body knew how to find a steady pace and maintain it. The push-ups and other exercises listed were familiar movements. He had not been training for this specific test, but his consistent routine had incidentally prepared him for it. His body was ready. The physical challenge held no terror for him. His hour of daily study had built a foundation of knowledge. The mathematics problems he practiced each day were similar to those that would likely appear on the exam. His focused reading had improved his comprehension and reasoning skills. He had not crammed for this test, but his daily investment had created a reserve of understanding he could draw upon. The studying felt less like a desperate scramble and more like a final review of material he already knew. The announcement was not a threat, but a chance to measure his growth. It was an external event that would test the internal changes he had been cultivating. He saw it as a benchmark, a way to see how far he had come. The outcome was important, but the real value was in the measurement itself. It would show him the tangible results of his daily habits. It was an examination of his process, not just his knowledge. His mother saw the calm in his eyes and felt a hope she hadn't dared to feel before. She watched him read the notice, noting the absence of the anxious energy that usually surrounded such opportunities. She saw a new steadiness in his posture, a quiet confidence in his expression. This subtle change told her more than any boastful promise could. Her son was different. He was not hoping for a miracle. He was prepared for an opportunity. The distant dream of a better life suddenly had a date and a place. The abstract idea of a good job became concrete. There was a specific day he needed to appear at a specific field on the outskirts of the city. The dream was no longer a vague notion for the future. It was a real event on the calendar. This made the possibility feel immediate and tangible. The path from wish to reality had become visible. The harvest time for his habits was approaching. The seeds he had been planting every morning were about to be tested. The consistent effort was ready to yield its results. He had been watering and tending his garden without knowing exactly when the harvest would come. Now the season had arrived. He would soon see what his daily discipline had grown. The principle Gopal Kaka had taught him was moving from theory to reality.
On the day of the exams, the field was crowded with young men from nearby villages. They arrived in buses and on bicycles, their faces a mixture of hope and nervous energy. The air was thick with anticipation and the dust stirred up by hundreds of feet. They gathered in loose groups, some laughing too loudly, others standing in silent isolation. It was a sea of potential, but also a sea of anxiety, each person carrying the weight of their family's expectations. Raju saw the anxiety on many faces. Some were cramming notes until the last second. They held folded pieces of paper close to their chests, their lips moving silently as they tried to memorize formulas and facts. Their eyes darted back and forth, frantic to absorb one more piece of information. They were treating the exam like a sudden test for which they were unprepared, a final desperate attempt to make up for months of neglect. The panic was palpable, a cloud of fear that hung over them. Others were stretching cold muscles, trying to prepare a body they had neglected. They bent awkwardly, their movements stiff and unpracticed. They jogged in small, anxious circles, trying to wake up limbs that were used to a more sedentary life. You could see the strain in their faces, the realization that physical fitness cannot be manufactured in a few minutes. They were attempting to forge a connection between their mind and a body that had not been properly trained for this moment. It was a race against their own physical limitations. Raju, however, had already done his preparation, not in a day, but over many months. He stood apart from the frantic energy. There were no last-minute notes in his hands. His body did not require a sudden, aggressive warm-up. The preparation was not an event for today. It was the story of his recent life. Each morning run was a page of that preparation.
Each hour of study was a chapter. He had arrived not to cram, but to demonstrate what he had already built. He had slept well, eaten a light breakfast, and done his usual short warm-up. His routine had been no different from any other day. The familiar actions had grounded him, providing a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos. He had not spent the night tossing and turning with worry. His body was rested and fueled. The short warm-up was just a way to greet his muscles, to remind them of the work they knew how to do. He was operating from a place of readiness, not emergency. When the whistle blew for the run, he found a steady pace, his body knowing what to do. There was no frantic sprint, no burning rush of adrenaline. His legs settled into a rhythm they had practiced countless times. His breathing fell into a familiar pattern. It felt less like a test and more like another morning on the road near his home. The distance was longer, the stakes were higher, but the fundamental action was the same. His body responded with the memory of all those previous runs. He saw others sprint ahead at the start, only to fade quickly, their lungs burning. They pushed past him with explosive energy, determined to lead the pack. But their initial speed was unsustainable. Within the first few hundred meters, their pace broke. They slowed to a jog, then a walk, their hands on their hips as they gasped for air. They had spent their entire reserve of energy in the first moments of the race. They were running on motivation, which is fleeting, not on discipline, which is enduring. He maintained his rhythm, his breath even, his mind calm. He did not look at the runners falling behind him. He kept his eyes forward, focused on his own path. His pace was not the fastest, but it was constant. He was like a metronome, ticking off each step with reliable consistency. The calm in his mind allowed him to manage his energy, to distribute it evenly across the entire course. He was running his own race, according to a plan written by his daily habits. In the written exam hall, the same pattern emerged: panic versus practiced calm. The room was silent except for the scratching of pencils and the occasional nervous sigh. Some candidates fidgeted in their seats, their eyes wide as they read the questions. They flipped through the pages too quickly, their minds racing. Raju, however, opened his booklet and began to work. The focus he had cultivated during his hour of daily study was now his greatest asset. The questions were not enemies to be feared, but puzzles to be solved with the tools he had sharpened over time. He was not competing against others. He was harvesting the fruit of his own discipline. The other young men in the room were not his opponents. They were merely fellow farmers in their own fields, each dealing with their own crop. His success or failure was not relative to theirs. It was the direct result of the seeds he had chosen to plant and tend to. The exam was simply the day he got to see what had grown. He was there to gather what was his.
As he worked through the exam questions, Raju felt a sense of familiarity. The words on the page were not strangers. He recognized the patterns in the mathematics problems. He understood the logic behind the reasoning questions. It was like meeting people he had seen many times before in a different context. There was no shock or surprise, only a quiet recognition. The material felt accessible, not intimidating. The topics were not alien. He had met them during his hours of study. He had spent 60 minutes each day in the company of these very concepts. He had wrestled with similar equations at his small desk. He had read passages that explored the same themes. The exam was not introducing new information, it was simply asking him to demonstrate a relationship he had already built with the material over many weeks. The questions were an invitation to converse, not a trap designed to confuse him. He didn't know every answer, but he knew how to think through the problems. When he encountered a question that was difficult, he did not panic. He did not skip it immediately. He applied the method he had practiced. He broke the problem down into smaller parts. He looked for clues in the wording. He used logic to eliminate wrong answers.
This systematic approach was a skill he had developed. It was more valuable than memorizing a single fact because it could be applied to any challenge. The discipline of daily study had trained his mind to focus under pressure. The exam hall was a high-pressure environment. The clock was ticking, the other candidates were fidgeting, but Raju's mind knew how to enter a state of concentration. He had done it every day for an hour. The silence of the room was no different from the silence of his study hour. The pressure was just another condition to work within. His mind had been conditioned to ignore distractions and engage with the task at hand. This was the hidden benefit of habit. It built a resilience that motivation alone could not build. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are unreliable. They come and go with the weather. But a habit is a structure. It provides a framework that holds firm even when feelings fail. The habit of study had built a resilient mind, one that could perform consistently regardless of external pressures or internal doubts. This resilience was the true reward of his daily effort. While others were drained by the effort of the day, Raju felt energized by it. He saw the exhaustion on the faces of the young men around him. The combined physical and mental strain had emptied their reserves. For Raju, the day had been an affirmation. Using his trained body and his focused mind felt natural and satisfying. It was not a drain on his energy, but a confirmation of it. He left the exam hall feeling more alive than when he had entered. He had proven to himself that he could show up and perform when it mattered. This was a deeper kind of knowledge than any academic fact. It was a knowledge of his own character. He now knew that under pressure, he would not crumble. He would not run away. He would access the preparation he had diligently stored away. This self-knowledge was a form of power. It would serve him in many situations beyond this single exam. The real victory was not the potential job, but this newfound self-trust. The job was an external reward, something that could be given or taken away. The self-trust was an internal possession, something that was his to keep forever. It was the confidence that came from knowing he was capable of following through on his commitments. This trust was the foundation upon which he could build any future he wanted. He walked out of the exam hall with a quiet smile, regardless of the result. The outcome was now in the hands of the examiners. His work was complete. The smile was not about triumph over others. It was an acknowledgement of a personal milestone. He had faced a significant challenge and had not been found wanting. He had applied the lessons taught to him by Gopal Kaka, and they had held true. The satisfaction was pure and personal. He had already won the most important battle, the one against his former self. The boy who couldn't start was gone. In his place was a young man who understood the power of small, consistent actions. He had defeated the inertia of his old habits. He had overcome the voice of laziness and distraction. This internal victory was permanent. No test result could ever take it away from him. He had reclaimed authority over his own life.
The weeks of waiting for results were a test of a different kind. The pressure of the exam day was over, replaced by the slow passage of time. There was nothing left to do but wait. This period could have been a vacuum filled with worry, a mental torture of what-ifs and maybes. It was a test of patience and of the new mindset Raju had been building. It measured his ability to live with uncertainty without being controlled by it. The old Raju would have been consumed by anxiety, checking for news every day. He would have asked every visitor to the village if they had heard anything. He would have made excuses to walk past the announcement tree multiple times a day, hoping for an update. His mind would have been a constant loop of speculation and fear. Every day without news would have felt like a personal failure.
The waiting would have been its own form of punishment. But the new Raju simply returned to his routine: the run, the study, helping his mother. The structure of his day provided a familiar path through the uncertainty. The morning run was still there. The hour's study was still there. The chores for his mother were still there. These were things he could control. They were actions with immediate, tangible results. They anchored him in the present moment, preventing his mind from spinning off into an anxious future. His life did not go on hold while he waited for an answer. He understood that the result was now out of his hands. It was the yield of past actions. The crop was already in the ground. It was growing, or it was not. His job as the farmer was done for this season. Worrying would not make the plants grow faster or stronger. This realization brought a profound sense of peace. He had done the work. He had planted the seeds with care and consistency. The outcome was a separate event, the natural result of that effort. His worth was no longer tied to a single outcome, but to the person he was becoming. The potential job offer was an external event. It did not define him. His value came from his daily actions, his discipline, his respect for himself. Whether he got the job or not, he was still the person who ran each morning and studied each day. That person had value regardless of any title or position. This internal sense of worth was immune to the whims of an external result. Gopal Kaka would see him on his runs and offer a simple, knowing nod. No words were exchanged. The old man did not ask if there was news. He simply acknowledged the continuation of the process. The nod said everything. It said, "I see you. You are still tending your garden." This silent recognition was more powerful than any pep talk. It was a confirmation that Raju was on the right path, regardless of the destination. The village buzzed with speculation, but Raju remained focused on his daily garden. People stopped him in the market to ask about the job. They offered their predictions and their opinions. He listened politely but did not engage in the speculation. His internal focus was sharp. He knew that getting caught up in the village gossip would only stir up anxiety. His mental energy was better spent on his books and his runs. The external noise could not distract him from his internal work. This peace amidst uncertainty was the ultimate evidence of his transformation. The true test of discipline is not how you act when you are moving toward a goal, but how you act when you are forced to stand still. Raju's ability to wait calmly showed that his change was deep and real. It was not a temporary performance aimed at a specific reward. It was a fundamental shift in how he approached his life. The peace was the fruit of his disciplined labor. He had learned to trust the process, not just desire the product. The run was valuable for the focus it built, not just for the fitness. The study was valuable for the mental clarity it created, not just for the exam score. The value was in the doing. The product, the outcome, was simply a byproduct. This shift in perspective allowed him to find satisfaction in the present moment, not in a distant, uncertain future. He was enjoying the farming, not just waiting for the harvest. The habit of discipline had become his anchor in a sea of unpredictability. Life would always be full of events he could not control. Opportunities would come and go, challenges would arise, but his routine was a constant. It was a choice he could make every day regardless of external circumstances. It steadied him. It provided a center of calm from which he could face anything. The discipline was no longer a tool for achieving one goal. It was the foundation for a resilient life.
The postman came to the door one afternoon, holding an official-looking envelope. He was a familiar figure in the village, but today, his arrival carried a different weight. The envelope was thick and cream-colored, with a government seal printed in the corner. It was the kind of mail that did not come often, the kind that usually contained news that could change a life. The postman handed it over without ceremony, his expression neutral, his duty simply to deliver. Raju's mother called for him,
her voice trembling with anticipation. She had been watching for the postman for days. She held the envelope carefully, as if it were something fragile and precious. Her voice carried through the small house, a mix of hope and fear. She did not open it herself. This was his news to receive. She stood waiting, her hands clasped together, her eyes fixed on the doorway where he would appear. He finished the sentence he was reading, closed his book, and walked calmly to the door. He was in the middle of a chapter about history. He placed a small scrap of paper between the pages to mark his place. He did not rush. The walk to the door was measured and steady. His mother's anxious tone did not create anxiety in him. He had learned to manage his reactions, to respond rather than react. He approached the situation with the same focus he applied to his studies. He opened the envelope and read the words, "You have been selected." The letter was brief and direct. It stated the position, the start date, and the location in the city where he was to report. The language was formal and efficient. There was no elaboration or congratulatory language. It was a simple statement of fact. He read it once, then again to be sure. The meaning was clear and unambiguous. He had passed the test. There was no screaming, no dramatic outburst. A deep, quiet satisfaction settled over him. It was a feeling that started in his chest and spread outward, a warm sense of completion. It was the feeling of a long journey finally reaching its destination. It was the confirmation of a truth he had already felt in his bones. The external result had finally aligned with his internal change. The moment was significant, but it did not require a loud celebration. He looked at his mother and saw tears of relief and pride streaming down her face. She was not looking at the letter, she was looking at him. Her tears were not just for the job, but for the son she saw standing before her. He was calm and sure, a young man who had earned his future. Her relief was for the end of a long worry. Her pride was for the character he had built. She saw the discipline and the strength, and that was what moved her to tears. The harvest had arrived. The seeds planted in doubt had grown into certainty. The small, consistent actions had compounded into a tangible result. The run, the study, the quiet perseverance, they had all led to this moment. The metaphor Gopal Kaka had used was no longer just a story. It was a lived experience. The yield was now in his hands, real and solid. The principle had been proven true in his own life. The village celebrated, but for Raju, the celebration was internal. Neighbors came to the house with sweets and congratulations. There was laughter and excited talk about the city. Raju accepted the good wishes politely, but his real feeling was a private one. The external celebration was nice, but it was noise around the edges of a deep, personal peace. The true reward was the knowledge that he had done it himself. He had not changed his life by luck. He had changed it by design. There was no accidental discovery or fortunate break. Every step had been intentional. The change had been built, action by action, day by day. He had followed a simple set of principles, and they had delivered the promised result. His success was not a mystery. It was a predictable outcome of a process he had chosen to follow. The formula was simple, but its execution had transformed his world. Understanding the power of habit was one thing, living it was another. The transformation was not in the knowing, but in the doing. The daily effort, repeated consistently, had reshaped his body, his mind, and his future. The simplicity of the formula made it available to anyone. The difficulty of the execution made it valuable. He had done the difficult work, and his world was now forever changed.
Raju's success did not happen in a vacuum. The village noticed the change. People saw him leave for the city job, but they also saw the young man he had become. They remembered the boy who used to wander aimlessly,
and compared him to the focused, calm person who now visited his mother on weekends. The transformation was visible in his posture, in the way he spoke, in the quiet confidence he carried. It was a change that could not be hidden, and it sparked conversations at the well and in the market. Younger boys started asking him about his routine, their eyes wide with curiosity. When he came home on a visit, they would gather around him shyly. They did not ask about the city or the job itself. They asked about the mornings. They wanted to know how he found the will to get up so early. They asked how he managed to study when there were so many more fun things to do. They saw in him a possibility for their own lives, a way out of the same struggles he had faced. He became a quiet example, much like Gopal Kaka had been for him. He did not seek out an audience or offer unsolicited advice. He simply lived his life when he was home, continuing his runs along the familiar village paths. His actions spoke louder than any speech could. The boys watched him, just as he had once watched the old man. They saw the consistency and the peace it brought him. They understood that his success was not an accident, but a result of this daily discipline. He didn't lecture, but when asked, he shared the farmer's metaphor. A boy would finally work up the courage to ask directly, "How did you do it?" Raju would point to a nearby field or a kitchen garden. He would explain that our days are like soil. We choose what to plant in them. He kept the explanation simple, using the same words Gopal Kaka had used for him. He did not add complexity or make it sound like a secret formula. He presented it as the simple, powerful truth it was. He saw the same spark of understanding in their eyes that he had once felt. It was a flicker of recognition, a moment when a confusing problem suddenly has a clear solution. The metaphor made the abstract concept of discipline concrete. It turned a daunting challenge into a manageable process. He could see the shift in their expression, from confusion to clarity. It was the look of someone who has been given a map after being lost for a long time. His mother walked through the village with a new lightness in her step. The constant worry that had weighed her down for years was gone. She did not need to boast about her son's achievement. The change in her demeanor was evidence enough. She smiled more easily. She stood a little taller. Her pride was a quiet, glowing thing that everyone could sense. Her son's success had lifted a burden from her shoulders, allowing her to move through the world with renewed hope. The achievement was not just his. It lifted the spirits of his entire family. His younger sisters saw a new path open for them. His extended family felt a collective pride. The success was shared, a rising tide that lifted all boats. It proved that one person's improvement could strengthen the entire family unit. It provided a new story for the family to tell, a narrative of possibility instead of limitation. This demonstrated that disciplined habits don't just feed the individual, they nourish the community. Raju's personal transformation created a new standard, a new example of what was possible. It showed the other young people in the village that their circumstances did not have to define their future. His discipline became a resource for others, a blueprint they could follow. The benefits of his good habits spilled over into the lives of everyone around him. One person's transformation can become a blueprint for others. It creates a new pattern that others can see and emulate. It makes the impossible seem attainable. Raju was not a mythical hero. He was a boy from their own village. His journey was understandable. His methods were simple. This made his success incredibly powerful. It was a proof of concept that resonated deeply with those who knew him. The power of a single habit had created a ripple far beyond itself. The decision to run each morning seemed like a small private act, but that act, repeated consistently, had changed a life. That changed life then began to influence other lives. The ripple spread from Raju to his family, to the younger boys, to the entire mood of the village.
It was a testament to the interconnectedness of a community and the profound impact of a single, consistent choice. The smallest seed had grown into a tree that offered shade to many.
Before leaving for the city, Raju went to visit Gopal Kaka one last time. His bags were packed and the taxi was scheduled to arrive later that afternoon. But there was one thing he needed to do first. He walked the familiar path to the old man's house, the dust soft beneath his feet. This visit was not an obligation. It was a necessary completion of a cycle. He needed to close the circle that had begun with a simple question months earlier. He found him in his garden, as always, tending to his plants. The sun was high and Gopal Kaka was on his knees, his hands working the soil around the roots of a chili plant. The garden was lush and green, a testament to the same daily care that had transformed Raju's life. The scene was exactly as it had been on the day they first spoke. The consistency of the place was a comfort. It represented the unchanging principles that had guided Raju's change. Raju simply said, "Thank you." The seeds grew. He did not need to elaborate. The words carried the weight of his entire journey. He was not just thanking the man for a piece of advice. He was acknowledging the profound shift that had occurred because of it. The simple statement encompassed the early mornings, the rainy runs, the hours of study, and the final result. It was a summary of his transformation. Gopal Kaka smiled, wiped his forehead, and replied, "I only showed you the packet. You did the planting." He did not take credit for the harvest. He gestured to the seed packet lying nearby on a small wooden crate. His role, he implied, was merely to point out that seeds existed and that they could grow. The difficult work of preparing the soil, planting the seeds, watering them daily, and pulling the weeds, that had all been Raju's labor. The old man had provided the knowledge, but the boy had provided the effort. The old man emphasized that this was not an ending, but a new beginning. He stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from his hands. He looked at Raju not as a project that was finished, but as a student who had graduated to a new level. The village had been a simple garden. The city would be a much larger and more complex field. The achievement of the job was not a final destination. It was the starting line for a new set of challenges. The city would present new challenges, new distractions, new fields to plant. There would be different temptations and more demanding responsibilities. The quiet routine of village life would be replaced by the noise and pace of the city. The habits that had served him here would be tested in a new environment. They would need to be adapted and strengthened. The principles would face their real-world trial beyond the safety of the village. The principle, however, remained the same. Small, consistent actions create the future. This was the enduring lesson. The location did not change the fundamental law. Whether in a village or a city, a person's life is built day by day. The choices made each morning compound over time to shape the years. The context might change, but the mechanism of growth is constant. This was the tool Gopal Kaka had given him, a tool that would work anywhere. Raju's gratitude was not for a secret, but for a lens through which to see the world. The old man had not given him a magical formula or a hidden shortcut. He had given him a new way of interpreting his own actions and their consequences. He had taught him to see his life as a garden. This perspective was more valuable than any specific piece of advice because it could be applied to any situation. It was a framework for making decisions. He left the village not just with a job, but with an operating system for his life. The job was a single application of that system. The real possession was the system itself, the understanding of how to build a meaningful life through discipline. This system would help him navigate the city, build a career, and face any future difficulty. It was the ultimate reward, something that could not be taken away from him. The student was ready, and the teacher's work was complete. Gopal Kaka watched Raju walk away down the path. There was no need for further instruction. The lessons had been absorbed and internalized. The student had surpassed the need for a teacher because he had learned how to teach himself. He had learned how to learn. The mentor's purpose was fulfilled. He could return to his garden, knowing the most important seeds had already been planted and had grown strong.
Let's step back from the story and look at the mechanics of what happened. Raju's transformation wasn't magic. It followed a predictable pattern that neuroscientists and psychologists have observed. Understanding this pattern gives you the power to create similar change in your own life. It turns the mysterious process of building discipline into a clear and manageable system. Every habit consists of a cue, a routine, and a reward. This is a neurological loop that runs automatically in our brains. The cue is the trigger that starts the habit. The routine is the behavior itself. The reward is the benefit your brain gets from completing the routine. This loop is how our brains save energy by automating frequent actions. Once a habit is formed, the cue automatically prompts the routine in anticipation of the reward. For Raju, the cue was waking up. The old routine was laziness. He would open his eyes and the automatic response was to stay in bed, to avoid effort. The reward was temporary comfort. The feeling of the warm blanket and the ease of doing nothing provided an immediate, though fleeting, sense of relief. This loop was well established. His brain had carved a deep pathway connecting the morning alarm to the behavior of staying put. Gopal Kaka helped him change the routine to running and studying. The cue remained the same, waking up, but instead of following the old routine, Raju began a new one. He put on his shoes and ran. He opened his books and studied. This new behavior created a new reward, self-respect. The feeling of satisfaction after a run, the calm after an hour of study, these became the new positive outcomes his brain started to anticipate. Over time, craving the new reward made the cue trigger the new routine automatically. At first, it required conscious effort. He had to force himself out of bed. But as he consistently experienced the reward of self-respect, his brain began to crave that feeling. The neurological pathway for the new habit started to form. The cue of waking up began to automatically suggest the new routine because his brain wanted the new reward. The struggle lessened with each repetition. This is how discipline stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like a part of you. It is not about willpower forever. It is about rewiring your brain's automatic responses. The new habit loop becomes the default path. The action becomes identity. You are no longer a person who forces themselves to run. You are a person who runs. The behavior is integrated into your sense of self, making it sustainable and natural. The key is to start so small that the new routine is easy to complete. Raju began with a run of only 200 meters. It was a distance that felt almost silly, but its simplicity was its power. Because it was easy, he could do it consistently. Consistency is what builds the new neural pathway. A small action repeated is more effective than a large action attempted once.
The goal is to make the new routine so simple that failure is nearly impossible. The reward must be immediately felt, even if it's just the satisfaction of checking a box. The brain learns through immediate feedback. The reward for a new habit cannot be a distant goal like a job in the city. It must be something you feel right after the routine. For Raju, it was the feeling of a cold shower after his run. It was the simple act of closing his book after an hour. He trained his brain to associate the new routine with an immediate positive feeling. Understanding this loop empowers you to redesign your own life, one habit at a time. You can analyze any behavior you want to change, identify the cue, design a new routine, ensure an immediate reward. This process gives you agency. You are not at the mercy of your old patterns. You can intentionally build new ones that serve you better. You become the architect of your own habits. You are not fighting your nature. You are working with its wiring. The habit loop is a fundamental part of how the human brain operates. Trying to fight this system with sheer willpower is a losing battle. But when you understand how the system works, you can use it to your advantage. You can strategically place cues, design routines, and attach rewards to build a life that aligns with your goals. This is the elegant secret behind lasting change.
It's natural to feel resistance when planting a new habit. Your brain is designed to conserve energy. It prefers the path of least resistance. When you try to establish a new behavior, your mind pushes back. This resistance is not a sign that you are weak or incapable. It is a biological reflex. Your brain is simply trying to protect its resources by sticking with what is familiar and easy. This initial feeling of difficulty is a normal part of the process. Neural pathways for old behaviors are like well-worn dirt paths. They are easy to travel. Your brain has used these paths countless times. The connection between the cue and the routine is strong and automatic. When you decide to take a different route, your brain resists. It is comfortable on the old path. It knows exactly where it leads and how much energy it will require. The familiar, even if it is unhelpful, feels safer and more efficient than the unknown. Creating a new habit is like cutting a new path through a dense forest. It requires effort. You have to clear away the undergrowth. You have to break through branches and navigate unfamiliar terrain. Each step is difficult. The ground is uneven. You cannot see very far ahead. This hard work is what you feel as resistance. It is the mental and physical effort of creating something that does not yet exist. You are building a new road where only wilderness stood before. This initial friction is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. It is a sign that you are building something new. The struggle is evidence of progress, not failure. If it were easy, it would not be a new path. It would be the old one. The discomfort is the feeling of growth. It is the necessary strain of forging a new connection in your mind. You should welcome this friction as a confirmation that you are moving in a new direction. With each repetition, you clear the path a little more. You make it easier for the next time. The first time you walk through the forest, the way is almost impassable. The second time, you recognize a few landmarks. The third time, you have flattened some of the grass. After many trips, the path becomes clear. The branches are pushed aside. The ground is packed down. The journey becomes smoother and requires less conscious effort. The resistance gradually lessens. This is why consistency is more important than intensity, especially at the start. A massive, intense effort to clear the path in one day will leave you exhausted. You might make a big clearing, but the path will grow over again if you don't use it. A small amount of consistent effort, applied daily, is far more effective. Walking the path for just a few minutes each day does more to establish it than a single day of frantic chopping. Consistency trains your brain to recognize the new route as the preferred one.
The brain's resistance is a defense mechanism, not a personal failure. It is an ancient system trying to keep you safe by avoiding unnecessary exertion. Do not interpret this natural caution as a flaw in your character. It is simply your biology operating as designed. The feeling of not wanting to do the new habit is not a moral failing. It is a physiological response. Understanding this distinction is crucial for maintaining your motivation. Understanding this can help you be kinder to yourself during the difficult early stages. When you feel the resistance, you can acknowledge it for what it is. You can say to yourself, "This is just my brain trying to save energy. It is not a reflection of my ability." This self-compassion prevents you from becoming discouraged. It allows you to acknowledge the difficulty without being defeated by it. You can be patient with the process. The goal is not to eliminate the friction, but to push through it until the path is clear. You cannot avoid the initial struggle. It is an essential part of building a new neural pathway. The aim is to persist despite the friction. With enough repetitions, the friction will naturally decrease. The path will become the easy route. But in the beginning, you must accept the hard work as the price of admission for a better way of living. The struggle is part of the process of building a stronger you. Just as lifting a heavy weight strengthens your muscles, pushing through mental resistance strengthens your will. Each time you choose the new path despite the difficulty, you are not just building a habit, you are building resilience. You are training your mind to overcome inertia. This inner strength, forged in the daily choice to act, becomes a permanent asset. The struggle is not an obstacle to your growth. It is the substance of it.
Raju's transformation wasn't caused by one heroic act, but by the compound effect. There was no single moment of dramatic effort that changed everything. His success was built from countless small decisions made each day. The choice to get out of bed, to put on his shoes, to open his book. These minor actions seemed insignificant on their own, but together, accumulated over time, they created a change that was both profound and permanent. The real power was in the accumulation, not the explosion. The compound effect is the principle of reaping huge rewards from a series of small, smart choices. It is the mathematical certainty that small actions, repeated consistently, will multiply their results. It is not a theory or a hope. It is a predictable outcome, like interest growing in a savings account. You may not see the growth each day, but the numbers are always adding up in the background. The key is consistency, not intensity. Reading for 1 hour seems insignificant, but over a year, that's 365 hours of learning. Think about what you could learn in 365 focused hours. You could master a new language. You could gain a deep understanding of history or science. You could develop a valuable professional skill. That mountain of knowledge is not built in a day. It is built one small, consistent hour at a time. The person who does this is not a genius. They are just consistent. A short run seems trivial, but over months it rebuilds cardiovascular health and mental resilience. The first run does almost nothing. The 10th run does a little more. After 100 runs, the body is fundamentally different. The heart is stronger. The lungs are more efficient. The mind has learned to push through discomfort. This transformation is not the result of one long, painful race. It is the result of showing up for a short, manageable run day after day. These small actions, repeated consistently, are like adding drops of water to a bucket. Each drop is tiny. You can barely see the water level rise after 1 drop, or 10, or even 100. You could add drops for days and the bucket might still look nearly empty. The process requires patience. It requires faith that the drops are adding up even when you cannot see the progress with your eyes. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then one day, the bucket overflows.
The transition is sudden. The water finally reaches the brim. The result becomes visible to everyone. This is the moment when people notice the change. They see the new knowledge or the new fitness and call it an overnight success. But you know the truth. You know about all the drops that had to be added before the bucket could finally spill over. We often overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. We expect dramatic change from a single burst of effort and become discouraged when it doesn't happen. At the same time, we fail to see the incredible potential of a full year of small daily actions. A year is a long chain of days. Each day is a link. A chain of small positive links is unbreakable. A chain of wasted days is a heavy burden. Success is rarely the result of a single monumental effort. It's a quiet accumulation. The great achievements we admire are almost always the sum of many small, unnoticed actions. The writer's novel is the accumulation of daily writing sessions. The musician's performance is the accumulation of daily practice. The leader's wisdom is the accumulation of daily reflection. The big moments are just the unveiling of the quiet work. Focus on the process, not the product. The product will take care of itself. If you focus only on the distant goal, you will become discouraged. The goal is too far away. Instead, focus on the single action you can take today. Did you do your run? Did you complete your study hour? If you can answer yes, then you have succeeded for today. String enough successful todays together and the future product becomes inevitable. Your life today is the sum total of the habits you've repeated most often. You are not the product of your intentions or your wishes. You are the product of your actions. The things you do every day have sculpted the person you are. Your health, your knowledge, your relationships, they all reflect your most common routines. To change your life, you do not need to change everything at once. You just need to change what you do today, and then repeat it tomorrow.
So, what does this mean for you, right now, today? The story of Raju is not just a tale from a distant village. It is a reflection of a principle that operates in every life. The same forces that shaped his future are shaping yours at this very moment. Your current reality is the outcome of choices you have already made. Your future reality will be the outcome of choices you are about to make. The power to influence that outcome is always in your hands. Your life is a garden. You are the farmer. Every day, you are planting seeds. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a functional truth. Your actions are seeds. Your words are seeds. Even your thoughts are seeds as they influence your actions. You are constantly dropping these seeds into the soil of your time and energy. You cannot choose not to plant. The only choice is what you will plant. Inaction is itself a seed that grows into a harvest of missed opportunities. The question is not whether you are planting, but what you are planting. Are you planting seeds of health or seeds of neglect? Are you planting seeds of knowledge or seeds of distraction? Are you planting seeds of connection or seeds of isolation? Every email you send, every conversation you have, every meal you eat, every hour you spend, each one is a seed. You are cultivating a specific crop with your daily routines. The harvest will match the seeds without exception. Is the seed you plant today one that will feed you tomorrow or starve you? A seed of procrastination might feel comfortable now, but it will grow into a weed of stress and regret. A seed of mindful spending will grow into financial security. A seed of a kind word will grow into a stronger relationship. A seed of exercise will grow into vitality. You must learn to judge your actions not by their immediate ease, but by their long-term yield.
ask yourself what kind of fruit you want to eat in the future and plant accordingly. You don't need a grand plan to start. You just need one small, positive seed. Overwhelm is the enemy of action. Do not look at the entire barren field of your life in despair. Do not try to plow the whole field in one day. Focus on a single, tiny patch of soil. Choose one behavior so simple it seems almost insignificant. The grandeur of the plan is irrelevant. The consistency of the action is everything. The mightiest forest began with a single seed. It could be 5 minutes of walking, 1 page of a book, or simply making your bed. It could be drinking a glass of water when you wake up. It could be writing 1 sentence in a journal. It could be putting your phone away for 30 minutes to talk with your family. The specific action does not matter as much as the positive nature of it. Choose something that clearly moves you in a better direction. Choose something so easy that you have no good excuse to avoid it. Do it consistently, without fanfare, and trust the process happening underground. Do not announce your new habit to the world. Do not seek external validation. The growth of a seed is a quiet, private affair. Show up each day and perform the small action. Then, go about your life. Do not dig up the seed to check for roots. Have faith that the compound effect is working even when you cannot see it. Your job is to water the seed. The seed's job is to grow. Motivation will come and go, but discipline is the commitment to water the seed anyway. You will not always feel like taking that walk or reading that page. On those days, motivation is absent. This is when discipline takes over. Discipline is the decision to honor your commitment to your future self, even when your present self complains. It is the understanding that the action itself is more important than the feeling attached to it. Discipline is what bridges the gap between your intentions and your results. You have the power to change your life, not by a single leap, but by a series of small steps. Transformation is not an event, it is a process. It is the accumulation of countless minor adjustments. You change your life by changing your days. You change your days by changing the few minutes you dedicate to your chosen seed. The power is not in one massive effort, but in the relentless application of a tiny positive pressure. The most powerful time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second most powerful time is now. You cannot go back and change the past. You cannot reclaim the time that has already passed, but you have this present moment. You have today. You can plant a seed right now that will begin growing immediately. Do not waste another day wishing you had started earlier. The best time to start building the future you want is always today. The seeds you plant now will become the shade under which your future self will one day rest.
This story is not just about Raju. It is a mirror held up to your own potential. The struggles he faced are universal. The desire for a better life, the frustration of inaction, the gap between dreams and daily reality, these are not unique to a village boy. They are human experiences. His journey offers a clear and practical blueprint for change. It shows that transformation is not reserved for a special few. It is available to anyone who understands the simple mechanics of habit. The same principles that transformed a boy in a small village are available to you. The laws of growth do not change based on your location or your circumstances. A seed planted in fertile soil will grow whether that soil is in a village or a city. The principle of consistency works for everyone. The compound effect is a mathematical certainty, not a matter of luck. You have the same ability to choose your daily actions. You have the same power to plant seeds in the garden of your own life. The path from where you are to where you want to be is paved with daily disciplines. The distance between your current reality and your desired future is not crossed by a single leap. It is crossed step by step, day by day. Each small act of discipline is like placing a stone on the path. At first, the path is short and barely visible, but with each stone you add, the path grows longer and more solid. Eventually, it becomes a clear and reliable road that leads directly to your goals. The destination is reached by focusing on the next stone, not on the distant horizon. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. You do not need to have your entire life mapped out. You do not need to know every challenge you will face. That kind of certainty is an illusion. All you need is the courage to act today. The first step is the most important because it creates momentum. It proves to yourself that movement is possible. The second step becomes easier, and the third, easier still. The staircase will reveal itself one step at a time, but only if you start climbing. I invite you to choose one small habit, just one, and commit to it for the next 21 days. Do not try to change everything at once. That is a recipe for overwhelm and failure. Look at your life and identify one area where a small improvement would make a difference. Then, select a single, tiny action that would move you in that direction. The action should be so simple that it feels almost too easy. Your commitment is not to a result, but to the action itself, repeated daily for just 3 weeks. Don't tell the world, just do it quietly, for yourself. There is no need for announcements or social media posts. This is a private contract between you and your future self. External validation can sometimes dilute internal motivation. The real reward must come from the satisfaction of keeping a promise to yourself. This quiet commitment builds a deep and authentic sense of self-trust. It is a personal experiment, the results of which are for your eyes only. Observe the subtle changes in your energy, your focus, and your peace of mind. Pay attention not to the grand outcome, but to the minor shifts. Do you feel a little more clear-headed in the morning? Is it slightly easier to concentrate? Do you feel a small sense of accomplishment at the end of the day? These subtle changes are the first signs of growth. They are the shoots breaking through the soil. They are the evidence that the seed you planted is alive and growing. Become the farmer of your own future. Start planting today. Take ownership of your days. Recognize that you are the one who chooses what to plant in the soil of your time. Do not leave your garden to chance. Be intentional. Select your seeds with care. Water them with consistency. Protect them from the weeds of distraction. Your future harvest depends entirely on the choices you make today. The quality of your life will reflect the quality of your daily habits. If this story inspired you, consider subscribing for more tales of growth and transformation. Our channel is dedicated to sharing simple, powerful principles through stories that resonate. Each video is designed to offer not just inspiration, but a practical lens through which to view your own life. If you found value here, you will likely find value in the other stories we share. Share it with someone who might need a reminder that their future is in their hands. You probably know someone who feels stuck. They might be struggling with the same cycle of starting and stopping. This story could be the gentle nudge they need. It could plant a seed of hope. Sharing this message is a simple act of kindness that could help someone else begin their own journey. Pass on the reminder that change is always possible, one small seed at a time.
The power to change your life lies not in a distant, complicated secret. It lives in the simple, repeatable actions of today. The grandest future is built with the small bricks of daily routine. These ordinary moments, when chosen with care, become the foundation of an extraordinary life. Start your habit today, no matter how small. A 5-minute walk, 1 page of a good book, making your bed. Do not wait for a sign or a surge of motivation.
Action itself creates the momentum you seek. Small, deliberate steps, repeated, inevitably lead to significant change. Your future self will thank you for the seeds you have the courage to plant now. They will look back on this day, on this choice, with gratitude. The investment you make in this moment will yield returns for all the moments to come. The garden of your future is waiting for you to begin.